Hi, my name's Jed. In my last video essay, I talked a bit about what I love about board games, what appealed me to the hobby, in a kind of attempt to appeal to maybe people who are on the fence. In that video, I talked a little bit about wanting to bring board games to a kind of wider audience, because I feel like they have more of an appeal than the general public gives them credit for. Part of that, though, is trying to squash some of the stigma that surrounds board gaming, something that I feel is quite present and something that's bringing the hobby down quite a bit. Some of the ideals around board games I get from a lot of people are that they're too complicated, they're too boring, or they go on for too long. And the issue with that type of thinking when it comes to the board game community is it's true. A lot of games are those things. They fall into a lot of those categories. But the issue is that's not every game, and a great majority of games aren't that at all. But I feel like as a board game community, we're perhaps failing to show the right games to the right people, and instead more focusing on the games we like and trying to show those to people that perhaps aren't going to click with them early on. Excuse me, do you have anything to say? Do you have anything to say, sir? Nothing to say. Now, mainly this video stems from an article I read a while back that just really got my goat at the time. It was called Please Don't Make Me Play Your Board Game, written by Gloria Liu and published by The Atlantic. Now, this upset me when I first read it because I thought the board game community has suffered enough. Why put us down more? Why create more stigma? But then I kind of read what she had to say, and frankly, I kind of ended up agreeing with a lot of what she said, because it offers a perspective to newcomers and their kind of reservations going into the hobby. But one thing that stood out as well, that's kind of the opening step to board gaming. If you're a newcomer to the hobby, it's really important you enter it with an open mind. If you go into something expecting to hate it, you most likely are going to hate it. You're going in expecting to hate it, so your brain is looking for evidence to back up that claim. Of course you're going to hate it. That was what you always expected. Now, I say this because at the start of the article, essentially her opening argument is that Gloria prefers conversation over playing board games. That's completely fair. That's a normal kind of stance to take. I can agree with that to some extent. But that argument falls a little bit flat when her opening anecdote is a colleague asking her to kind of a fun social board game night and her agreeing to go. I mean, if you didn't want to play a board game, why would you go play a board game? If you didn't want to, you can say, oh, I'm not interested really in board games, but I'd be happy to come over for a glass of wine or whatever it is. Or even ask, what game are we playing? That sounds a bit too complicated. Can we play something like this instead? As board gamers, not all of us are vampires looking for victims to glom our hobby onto. More often than not, we're just people looking for like-minded people. Not a lot of people engage with this hobby in an earnest way from an outside perspective. So it's exciting to find new people or even show somebody something that they might end up really loving. And sometimes that means showing it to somebody who's never really played it before, because often you'll play it with an open mind and you'll think, this is great, I actually love this. Sometimes you don't, and that's fine. But it's the openness that's important. If you approach the hobby closed-minded, you're not going to like it. And if you're expecting something like Monopoly or Catan, games that are very frustrating, they take too long, the rules are just way too much, perhaps you'll be pleasantly surprised with a new game that's nothing like that. Because modern board gaming really doesn't represent Monopoly or Catan, to be honest. We've moved past those tropes and built upon them to improve those kind of ideals. Monopoly is a game that doesn't have a definitive end, and it's deeply, deeply frustrating. As a community, we've tried to move past that because it's hard. It's hard to sit down and play a game that physically hurts to play. So this is something I guess to keep in mind as a newcomer. I want to make clear that mainly this video is pointed at enthusiasts of the hobby trying to get newcomers to take part. The opening step to take as a newcomer is to enter the hobby open-minded. Oh, it's your turn, by the way. Come on, it's your turn. Now, when I'm talking about being open to board games, I don't necessarily mean every board game. In the opening paragraph to the article, Gloria writes this: the moment someone starts explaining the rules to something like Gloomhaven or Codenames, my brain tends to involuntarily tune out. Now, there's nothing wrong with this statement on face value, right? To tune out of the teach of a game is completely normal. I feel like 90% of the board game community can relate with that. The second your brain starts receiving what seems like unneeded information, it turns off. That's fine. The issue comes with the two examples she used, Gloomhaven and Codenames. Now, I don't have Codenames myself, but just for reference, I do have Decrypto. It comes in about a box that size, right? Codenames is a fun, family-based card game about getting your team to guess the right words by giving them certain clues, right? It's very simple, it's very quick, and it's a lot of fun. Perfect for newcomers and perfect for even your mom or dad, right? This is Gloomhaven, a massive RPG-based dungeon crawling game that revolves around leveling up characters and going to a hub world and fighting a myriad of monsters, and you can unlock certain heroes, and there's 1,000,000 pounds of plastic and cardboard in the box, and it takes roughly 30 minutes to set up and about that much time to teach. It costs like $200 bloody dollars, and then to play the game will probably go on for like 3 hours depending on how each scenario goes, and it has a story that you get the idea, right? Why would you teach this game to a newcomer? Who's pulling this out for newcomers to board games? I don't know. Maybe for just the sake of the article, she just simply looked up two games that were popular at the time, right? And Codenames and Gloomhaven came out. Maybe that's what happened. But to me, it almost suggests that on her fun social games night, the host pulled out Gloomhaven, which would then obviously lead to her saying, I hate board games. Why am I playing this when I could be talking instead? Based off that, that's completely understandable. And this isn't a one-off kind of scenario either. I follow some people on Instagram, one person in particular who's more kind of fashion influencer based. On her story once, she posted going to a fun kind of social games night, and the game they were playing was Oath. The most complicated game you could possibly teach to a newcomer, in my opinion. And then, understandably, the next slide in her story was her going, I don't know what's going on. I've seen other instances like this, right? There's TikToks about people being invited to social game nights and playing games like Castles of Burgundy, which is not a massively complicated game, but one kind of Google search says maybe it's not for newcomers, maybe. I find this idea kind of shameful, to be honest with you. Who is showing these massive games to newcomers? There needs to be a line you draw with what game is for who. Do I show Gloomhaven to my colleague who doesn't play board games? Do I show Oath to a group of people who don't play board games? The answer is no. You should be looking at these games and deciding what is good for newcomers and what isn't. Because what we need in this hobby is for people to feel welcome and to feel like board games are approachable. Because they are. There's so many games that are approachable and easy. It's such a vast hobby with so much to offer that saying, oh, Gloomhaven is where it's at, is just the wrong type of thinking. To me, comparing Gloomhaven and Codenames is like comparing Fight Club to Shaun the Sheep. It's just not compatible at all. Something I would suggest if you're looking to host a board game night to newcomers is to ask the people coming over what they want to play. Maybe giving them a choice of a few games to say, here's some games I have, which one appeals to you the most, and giving them a kind of certain understanding of the complexity and the themes. Then they can feel part of the process. When they come over, they feel like they've decided on the game. They can feel part of it as well, rather than feeling like a game is being shoved down their throat. Because what we need in this hobby is for people to come into it surprised with what they've found. Some of the best board game nights I've had was when I've introduced a game to a newcomer and they've gone out saying, I was expecting this to be too complicated, but it's actually way easier than I was expecting. I didn't know that board games are like this. And it's such an important frame of mind for newcomers and for if we're looking to expand this hobby out, because what happens then is they think, well, if I could understand this, what else is there to offer? If this game is simple enough for me to understand and have fun, what other board games are out there? Gatekeeping the hobby by saying, these are the best board games, it's these massive Euro complicated big shot games, it's useless. It's useless. Now, of course, this is something I could say I'm guilty of as well. In the first video, I talked about how I showed my parents Wingspan, and that was the first game I had ever shown them. But that was because at the time, I didn't know what was out there, and that was the only game I had. In retrospect, I don't think Wingspan would have been the first game I showed my parents. I probably would have shown them something easier, quicker, and lighter. So, with that in mind, I'm now going to kind of rattle off a few games that I consider quick, light, and easy to teach. So, in no particular order, Pictomania is a game about drawing pictures a la Pictionary, but the idea is that everyone is drawing and guessing at the same time. So it's all about speed. So you want to draw a picture as quick as you can and then guess on everyone else's pictures as quick as you can, because if you're the first to do so, you get more points. So there's a lot of chaos with this game, and it's so much fun. Bonanza I've featured on the channel before. I show it to my parents because that's just how easy it is.
2 blue beans.
Take the 2 blue beans. Take the 2 blue beans. Take the 2 blue beans. Take the 2 blue beans.
It's a game about picking up beans and trading beans with other players around the table. You want to get the rare beans and harvest them to get the most money. If you're looking for a card game to show, I'd recommend Parade. It's a really easy to understand card game with a lot of strategy and bite. You're essentially trying to add cards to a parade without taking any cards off, because taking cards off is bad. If you're looking for something that can kind of help calm the evening down, I'd highly recommend Railroad Inc. Railroad Inc. is a game about rolling some dice and drawing some train tracks and some roads. You'll score points for your longest road and your longest railway. If you're looking for 2-player games, I'd recommend Jaipur. All you're ever doing is buying cards or trading cards. It's really quite fun, and I really recommend it to newcomers because it's quite simple and it shows how colorful and vibrant board games can be. Azul is a really great tile laying game. It's a game where you pick up tiles and put them down, but essentially you're both trying to pick up tiles to get points, but you're also trying to stop your friends from picking up tiles as well. Now, if you're looking for something cooperative, I would highly recommend Switch and Signal. The art style for this is a little bland, but it is a game about trains. Essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to get certain trains from point A to point B with the right material on the train. And you're just doing this by playing cards. Certain trains move faster than others, which are represented by their dice. The fact that communication in it, as far as I'm aware, is quite open, makes it more accessible to new players, as there isn't the silence around the table and frustration when somebody does the wrong thing. You can openly discuss what's going on. Lastly, out of the games I own, I would actually recommend Cascadia to new players. It's deceptively simple, but it is really bitey. What you're doing in this game is you're trying to draw the right tiles with the right animal in order to score points. Certain animals score differently, but it's incredibly simple. It's so quick to set up, but it has a lot of bite and it'll rack your head really quickly. I love Cascadia. It's such an easy one to show to people. Out of games I don't own, I would actually highly recommend Spots, as it's a really fun game with a really fun art style where you've got these little dice that represent spots on dogs, and you have your dog cards that need certain spots. You'll roll the dice and you'll fill in the spots on the cards. If you roll poorly, you'll bust and you have to get rid of all the dice on your dogs. Art style is great. I love the dog cards in that game. It's just so adorable. I'd also really recommend Cockroach Poker for card games. It's a really great, chaotic, stupid game where you're trying to essentially put cards in front of people, because in Cockroach Poker, there's no winner. There's only a loser, and then everyone else wins. What happens is you'll give a card to somebody and you'll say, that card has a cockroach on it. And you could be lying or you could be telling the truth. If the other person calls your bluff and says that doesn't have a cockroach on it and they happen to be right, then you get the card instead. But if they believe you and they flip it over and there isn't a cockroach on it, then they get the card instead. And they lose when they have 4 of a single creature on their card. Really great, stupid game that I love to play. I don't own it because I've been gifting it to everybody I know. If you have any other recommendations, please leave them in the comments. I'm really open to discovering new things, and especially in a video like this, I would love for anyone reading the comments to discover new games for themselves. Board gaming is, I think, my favorite thing in the world, to be honest with you, and I hate seeing people dislike it based off of assumptions that aren't true in this day and age. I would love to see board games expand more, and I'd love to see them more accepted by the public, because then we'd be able to play more board games. Anyway, if you're new to board games, I hope I could help. If you're somebody who is looking to get into board games, I hope I can help. Because if you're new to it and you want to play something really exciting, but the only person you know is going to show you something like Architects of the West Kingdom or Lowlands or something like that, then you can go into it saying, no, I don't want to play those games. Let's play one of these instead. So I hope that helps you. Anyway, my name is Jed. I hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.